You close a major deal, hit a career milestone, but then you see an old colleague's LinkedIn update, maybe showing off a promotion you think you deserved, or you hear about a competitor's funding round splashed across the headlines, and that familiar knot tightens in your stomach. It's a cold dread, a feeling that whispers maybe it's still not enough, that somehow, despite your efforts, despite your successes, you're falling behind. Where does this relentless pressure, this quiet hum of inadequacy, this status anxiety come from? Especially when, by almost every objective measure, many of us in leadership positions are more prosperous, more secure than any generation before us. How can we be surrounded by so much, yet feel so perpetually unsettled about our place in the world? Today on CEO's Library, where we dissect the books that shape the 1% mindset, we're diving deep into Alain de Botton's profoundly insightful work, Status Anxiety. This isn't just another business book. It's a philosophical and psychological exploration of a condition that silently gnaws at even the most successful among us. It's a book that dissects this modern ailment with astonishing clarity and offers genuine solace. Over the next 30 minutes, we won't just define status anxiety, we'll peel back the layers to uncover its surprising root cause, something far deeper, far more primal than just the pursuit of money or power. We'll explore how the very structure of our modern, supposedly fair, meritocratic society paradoxically fuels this feeling of never quite measuring up. We'll examine the subtle, pervasive ways our culture tells us who and what to value, often leaving us feeling lacking. But most importantly, we won't leave you there, adrift in the anxiety. We'll equip you with powerful mental frameworks and practical perspectives drawn from the wisdom of philosophy, the insights of art, and the lessons of history. These are tools designed to help you navigate this relentless pressure, build genuine inner resilience, and perhaps, most crucially, redefine what success truly means to you, independent of the crowd. Get ready for some perspective-shifting insights that could fundamentally change how you approach your career, your ambition, and your sense of self-worth. So, let's start with a puzzle. Why do many individuals who are already incredibly wealthy, who possess more resources than they could possibly spend in several lifetimes, continue striving, pushing relentlessly for more status, more recognition, more visibility? Is it purely insatiable greed? Or consider the flip side. Why does being ignored, being treated as insignificant by someone perceived as important, often sting so much more than actual physical discomfort? Why does the subtle snub cut deeper than a harsh word sometimes? Alain de Botton invites us to ponder this, echoing the great economist and philosopher Adam Smith, who asked centuries ago, to what purpose is all the toil and bustle of this world? What is the end of avarice and ambition, of the pursuit of wealth, of power and preeminence? The conventional answers, comfort, security, freedom, feel incomplete. De Botton suggests a more profound, more vulnerable answer. He argues, compellingly, that the primary driving force behind our relentless pursuit of status isn't fundamentally about the material goods or the tangible power that status brings. It's about the love we receive as a consequence of that status. Now, he doesn't mean romantic love or the love of close family. He means worldly love, the experience of being noticed, of being respected, of being taken seriously by the wider world, of having our presence acknowledged and valued. The opposite isn't just poverty or obscurity, it's what de Botton terms lovelessness, the chilling fear of being insignificant, invisible, overlooked, dismissed as a nobody. In this framework, money, fame, titles, achievements, these become mere tokens, symbols, currencies we use in the hope of purchasing this crucial validation from the society around us. They are means to an end. and that end is the feeling of being seen and respected. Think about it. The psychologist William James famously described the experience of being utterly unnoticed by others, as if one were invisible, as a kind of fiendish punishment. He suggested that if no one turned round when we entered, answered when we spoke, or minded what we did, but everyone acted as if we were non-existent things, a kind of despair and impotent rage would well up in us, from which the cruelest bodily tortures would be a relief. This resonates because, as de Botton highlights, our self-worth, our very sense of who we are, is often tragically dependent on how others perceive us. He uses a powerful metaphor. Imagine our self-conception as a leaking balloon, one that constantly requires the helium of external love, of positive attention and regard from others, just to stay inflated. This makes us incredibly vulnerable, susceptible to every pinprick of neglect, every subtle sign of disregard from the world. Without that external validation, the balloon deflates and our sense of self collapses. So, what does this mean for you as a leader, an executive, an aspiring entrepreneur? The application here is both personal and organizational. Next time you feel that familiar prickle of status anxiety, maybe after seeing a competitor's success or feeling slighted in a meeting, pause, interrogate the feeling. Ask yourself, is my anxiety genuinely about the objective lack of that specific car, that particular title, that slightly bigger office? Or is it fundamentally about the underlying fear that without these symbols, I won't receive the respect, the regard, the acknowledgement, the worldly love that I deeply crave? Recognizing this deeper hunger, this vulnerability, can itself diffuse some of the anxiety's power. It reframes the struggle from a purely material or competitive one to a more fundamental human need. And for leaders, this insight is pure gold, understanding that your team members, even your highest performers, are driven by this need for recognition, for respect, for feeling seen beyond just their compensation package, can unlock incredible levels of motivation, loyalty, and engagement. Are you actively providing that worldly love, genuine attention, sincere appreciation, public acknowledgement of contributions, demonstrating that you value them as individuals, not just their output? It's often these seemingly soft gestures, rooted in recognizing this fundamental human need, that make the biggest difference in fostering a thriving, resilient team culture, mitigating the anxieties that can otherwise fester. Now, if this need for validation is so fundamental, why does it feel particularly acute, almost epidemic, in our modern times? We live in an era of unprecedented progress, technological marvels, and widespread opportunity, at least compared to most of human history. Theoretically, the barriers to rising based on talent and effort are lower than ever. Yet, paradoxically, this seems to breed more anxiety, not less. As the French observer Alexis de Tocqueville noted way back in the 1830s, when studying the burgeoning democracy of America, he saw people who were materially well off, yet seemed perpetually restless in the midst of their prosperity, haunted by a strange melancholy and a disgust with life. Why, if opportunity is greater, shouldn't we feel more secure, more content? De Botton brilliantly isolates two powerful, interconnected forces unique to modern society that conspire to ramp up our status anxiety. The first is skyrocketing expectations. For most of history, social structures were rigid. If you were born a peasant, you expected to die a peasant. Ambition beyond your station was not only impractical, it was often considered sinful or foolish. Your reference group, the people you compared yourself to, was limited to those in your immediate vicinity, your fellow villagers. But the democratic and capitalist revolutions brought the intoxicating ideal that anyone can achieve anything. Suddenly, the theoretical ceiling was removed. This is amplified exponentially by modern media, which bombards us with stories and images of extraordinary success, of billionaires minted overnight, of global influence achieved by people who might seem, superficially, not so different from ourselves. As the philosopher David Hume observed, we don't envy people vastly removed from us. We don't typically feel status anxiety comparing ourselves to, say, Julius Caesar or Cleopatra. We feel it most acutely comparing ourselves to those we consider our peers, our former classmates, our colleagues, the people who started at the same level. This vastly expanded reference group, fueled by global connectivity and media, means there's always someone seemingly doing better, achieving more, reminding us of what we haven't yet attained. Recall William James's brilliantly simple equation: self-esteem equals success divided by pretensions or expectations. In a world that constantly inflates our pretension, telling us we can and should achieve limitless success, our potential for humiliation, for feeling inadequate, skyrockets even if our actual successes are objectively substantial. The gap between perceived potential and current reality becomes a breeding ground for anxiety. The second, and perhaps more insidious force, is meritocracy's shadow. The rise of meritocracy, the idea that status, wealth, and position should be earned based on individual talent, effort, and merit rather than inherited, is, on the surface, a deeply attractive and just ideal. It motivates hard work and innovation. But de Botton points out its dark, psychological flip side. If success is believed to be purely earned and thoroughly deserved, then the inescapable implication is that failure is equally deserved. In older, pre-meritocratic societies, poverty or low status could be attributed to misfortune, bad luck, divine will, or simply the fixed order of things. There was tragedy, perhaps, but not necessarily shame. But in a meritocratic world, if you fail to rise, if you struggle financially, if your career falters, the implicit and sometimes explicit message is often devastating: it's your fault. You weren't smart enough, you didn't work hard enough, you lacked the necessary grit or talent. This adds a heavy, crushing layer of personal shame and self-blame to material lack or professional setbacks. The medieval peasant, resigned to their divinely ordained station, was spared this particular psychological burden. The modern striver, told they could have been anything, bears the full weight of perceived inadequacy if they fall short of the glittering heights. So how do we apply these insights? First, take a hard look at your own reference groups. Who are you really comparing yourself to, day in and day out? Is scrolling through that curated feed of seemingly effortless success on LinkedIn or Instagram actually serving you, or is it just fueling anxiety? Can you consciously curate that group? Perhaps focus more on comparing yourself to your past self, tracking your own growth and progress. Can you shift your focus from the perceived gap to practicing genuine gratitude for what you have achieved, the skills you do possess, the positive impact you are making? This isn't about complacency, it's about reclaiming perspective. And crucially, challenge the shame narrative around failure, both for yourself and within your organizations. When things go wrong, when a project fails, when a target is missed, resist the immediate leap to personal blame and inadequacy. Decouple failures in a specific task or venture from inherent worthiness as a human being. Can you actively cultivate a culture in your team, in your company, even in your family, where setbacks are treated primarily as learning opportunities, valuable data points on the path to eventual success, rather than sources of deep personal shame? This echoes the principles of a growth mindset, focusing on learning and development rather than fixed judgments of talent. By understanding how meritocracy inadvertently weaponizes failure, we can start to defang it. Okay, so we understand the deep need for love and validation, and we see how modern expectations and meritocracy pour fuel on the fire of status anxiety. It can feel like we're caught in a societal trap. How do we fight back? How do we build an inner fortress, a more resilient sense of self, less vulnerable to the fluctuating judgments of the world? Alain de Botton doesn't just diagnose the problem, he offers compelling antidotes, drawing wisdom from perhaps unlikely sources, philosophers and artists. First, philosophy offers us the powerful shield of reason. De Botton encourages us to think of our minds as having a reason box. Imagine external opinions, judgments, criticisms, even praise entering this box. Inside, our rational faculty rigorously assesses them. Are they true? Are they fair? Are they based on sound evidence or just prejudice, envy, or ignorance? Only those judgments that pass this rational scrutiny, that are deemed true and relevant descriptions of our actions or character, are allowed to penetrate further and impact our self-esteem. False accusations, biased judgments, malicious gossip, ejected, uninformed flattery, also treated with skepticism. This approach echoes the Stoic philosophers, like Marcus Aurelius, who urged focusing on the integrity of our own actions and character, cultivating an inner citadel impervious to the fickle winds of public opinion. What matters most is living according to your own rational and ethical principles, not chasing external plaudits. Arthur Schopenhauer, perhaps more bluntly, even suggested cultivating a degree of intelligent misanthropy, not hatred of humanity, but a clear-eyed recognition of the frequent flaws, errors, biases, and superficiality inherent in mass opinion. Understanding the unreliability of the source lessens the power of its judgment over us. Second, art, in its myriad forms, acts as a profound corrective to status anxiety and the often narrow, materialistic definitions of worth promoted by society. How? De Botton suggests several ways. Novels, particularly those of great social realists like Jane Austen, George Eliot, or Thomas Hardy, often delve beneath surface appearances. They reveal the complex inner lives, the moral worth, the quiet dignity, and sometimes the profound suffering of characters who occupy low or middling rungs on the social ladder. They challenge the simplistic equation of external status with internal virtue or happiness. Think of Dorothea Brooke in Middlemarch or Fanny Price in Mansfield Park. Painters, too, can elevate the ordinary. Artists like Jean-Baptiste Simeon Chardin found immense dignity and beauty in humble domestic scenes, in simple objects, implicitly critiquing the aristocratic obsession with grandeur. Tragedy, from ancient Greek plays to Shakespeare, provides a powerful counterpoint to the meritocratic narrative of deserved failure. Tragedies remind us of the role of chance, fate, misfortune, Aristotle's concepts of hamartia, error or flaw, and peripeteia, reversal of fortune in human affairs. They evoke empathy for those who fall, revealing our shared human vulnerabilities and reminding us that failure is not always a sign of personal deficiency, but often a consequence of circumstance or forces beyond our control. And finally, comedy serves as a vital tool. Comedians, satirists, cartoonists often puncture pomposity, expose the absurdity of hierarchies, and critique social injustices through humor. Laughter can be a powerful way to gain perspective, deflate inflated egos, including our own, and remind us not to take the arbitrary markers of status too seriously. Art, in essence, the critic Matthew Arnold put it, functions as a criticism of life, offering alternative perspectives, deeper truths, and emotional solace that challenge the dominant, often anxiety-inducing narratives of our society. How can we apply these artistic and philosophical balms? Start by actively practicing the reason box technique. When you receive feedback, whether it's praise or criticism, don't just absorb it automatically. Pause, analyze its validity, consider the source and their potential biases or motivations. Decide consciously how much weight, if any, it deserves before letting it shape your view of yourself. Make a deliberate effort to seek out art, films, literature, or music that offers alternative perspectives on success, failure, class, and what truly constitutes a meaningful life. Whose stories resonate with you beyond their conventional status markers? Reflect on why, and consider the power of storytelling in your own sphere of influence. Can you use narratives in your leadership, in your communication, to foster more empathy, less judgment, and a broader understanding of human worth beyond simplistic metrics? Sharing stories of noble failures or highlighting unseen contributions can subtly shift the cultural valuation within a team or organization. Beyond strengthening our inner defenses with philosophy and art, can we fundamentally shift our perspective on the status game itself? What if the very rules we internalize, the things society tells us to value and strive for, aren't immutable laws of nature, but rather elaborate constructions that we can question, critique, and perhaps even choose to partially opt out of? De Botton explores several powerful perspective-shifting tools. First, adopting a political lens helps us understand that status ideals are rarely natural or inevitable. They are almost always ideological. They are constructed by societies, often reflecting and reinforcing the interests of dominant groups, a point central to thinkers like Karl Marx. The specific qualities or achievements that confer high status, whether it was piety and lineage in medieval Europe, artistic sensibility in Renaissance Florence, or entrepreneurial wealth and fame in our current era, are historically and culturally contingent. They change over time and differ between cultures. Recognizing this allows us to gain critical distance. We can see today's intense focus on financial success and public visibility not as the only possible or valid value system, but as just one historically specific set of priorities. This awareness alone can lessen the feeling that we absolutely must conform to this particular definition of success to be worthy. It opens up the possibility of questioning whether these dominant values truly align with our own deepest aspirations. Second, de Botton highlights the profound perspective offered by contemplating religion and mortality. The ancient practice of memento mori, remembering death, has long been used by philosophers and spiritual traditions to clarify priorities, as Leo Tolstoy vividly portrayed in The Death of Ivan Ilyich. Facing one's own mortality tends to make worldly status symbols, titles, wealth, social connections, even intellectual or artistic fame, shrink dramatically in significance. What emerges as truly important in the face of finitude is often love, connection, authenticity, kindness, and the quality of one's inner life. Regularly contemplating our limited time can be a powerful antidote to getting swept up in the trivial anxieties of day-to-day status competition. De Botton also suggests that vast silent landscapes, mountains, deserts, oceans, or contemplating ancient ruins can achieve a similar effect. They dwarf our human concerns, reminding us of our small place in the vastness of space and time, making interpersonal status differences seem less monumental. Furthermore, religious traditions historically offered alternative value systems entirely, prioritizing spiritual worth, piety, or service to others over worldly success. They also often emphasized community and belonging, providing a source of validation independent of individual achievement in the competitive marketplace. Finally, de Botton explores the concept of bohemia. This refers not just to a specific historical movement, but to the broader idea of a deliberate counterculture, a group that consciously rejects mainstream societal values, particularly the equation of wealth with worth. Bohemians typically champion inner richness, creativity, intellectual curiosity, emotional sensitivity, depth of experience, authenticity over material accumulation or conventional respectability. Crucially, they often form supportive communities. Think of the artists in Montparnasse in the 1920s, or Henry David Thoreau seeking simplicity at Walden Pond based on these alternative values. These communities provide mutual recognition and validation, insulating their members to some extent from the status pressures and judgments of the dominant society. They create their own status systems based on different criteria. How can we integrate these perspective shifts? Start by actively questioning the dominant success narrative in your specific field or industry. Is winning defined solely by financial metrics, market share, or title? Or are there other forms of wealth, like John Ruskin's idea of life itself, encompassing health, relationships, knowledge, and joy, that you personally value perhaps even more? Use the potent perspective of mortality occasionally. Ask yourself the classic question, on my deathbed, will this specific status chase, this particular anxiety, truly matter? Let the answer guide your bigger decisions and day-to-day priorities. And critically, take stock of your tribe, your closest friends, mentors, and colleagues. Do these relationships tend to reinforce conventional status anxieties, constantly comparing and competing? Or do they genuinely support a broader, more authentic definition of a well-lived life, validating you for who you are, not just what you achieve? You have agency here. You can consciously choose to cultivate relationships and communities that reflect and support your chosen values, creating your own small pocket of bohemias if needed. So as we draw this exploration of Alain de Botton's status anxiety to a close, what are the core takeaways for us as leaders, thinkers, and individuals striving in a complex world? We've learned that the pervasive anxiety about our standing isn't just a personal neurosis, but a condition deeply rooted in a fundamental human need for love and validation, for being seen and respected. This innate vulnerability is then significantly amplified by two key features of modern life: sky-high expectations fueled by democratic ideals and media, and the psychological burden of meritocracy, which equates failure with personal shame. We're set up, in many ways, to feel anxious. But crucially, we are not helpless victims of these societal pressures. De Botton equips us with a powerful arsenal of antidotes. We can employ philosophy, using reason as a shield to critically evaluate external judgments before letting them wound us. We can turn to art and tragedy to gain perspective, cultivate empathy, understand the role of chance, and appreciate human worth beyond status hierarchies. We can adopt a political lens to recognize that status systems are constructed ideologies, not natural laws, freeing us to question them. We can harness the profound perspective shifts offered by contemplating mortality and alternative value systems found in religion or nature, reminding us of what truly matters. And we can draw inspiration from Bohemia, consciously choosing our values and cultivating communities that support an authentic, less status-obsessed definition of a successful life. The ultimate goal, de Botton suggests, isn't necessarily to eliminate ambition or the desire for achievement altogether. Ambition can be a powerful force for good. Instead, the aim is to ground our ambitions in more authentic, personally meaningful values, and crucially, to build the inner resilience and perspective needed to protect ourselves from the corrosive, often paralyzing, effects of status anxiety. It's about running our race, driven by internal conviction rather than constantly looking over our shoulder in fear of falling behind in someone else's race. So here is your call to action. Don't just listen to these ideas, engage with them. Choose one strategy, one antidote we discussed today that resonates most powerfully with you right now. Maybe it's consciously managing your comparison group this week. Perhaps it's deciding to actively use the reason box the next time you face criticism. Maybe it's seeking out a specific piece of art, film, or literature known for its perspective-shifting power. Or maybe it's initiating an honest conversation about values and success with your inner circle, your team, or your family. Pick one, commit to reflecting on it, or practicing it this coming week. Notice what shifts. We'd love to hear your insights and experiences with navigating status anxiety. Join the conversation online using the hashtag CEO's Library. For the full transcript of this episode, along with any accompanying visualizations we mentioned, head over to our website at ceoslibrary.com. If you found this deep dive valuable, please take a moment to subscribe to CEO's Library on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. It truly helps others discover the power of the 1% bookshelf and find the insights they need to lead more effectively and live more fulfilling lives. Want to dive deeper into Alain de Botton's full analysis and proposed solutions? His exploration is rich with historical examples, philosophical nuance, and psychological insight far beyond what we could cover today. You can find the link to purchase Status Anxiety in the episode description. It's a book that rewards careful reading and reflection. Until next time, keep reading, keep leading, and keep building your 1% bookshelf.